Well, thanks for having us today. We're actually excited to be here and appreciate the opportunity to come in and tell you a little bit what Defy Ventures Colorado is about. I think the place to start is entrepreneurship, and you might think to yourself, well, why are we talking about entrepreneurship with work that you do in prisons? And our belief is that entrepreneurship is actually one of the keys to giving people a second chance who are incarcerated within the state of Colorado as well as in the United States. And so you might think to yourself, well, what does that mean to be an entrepreneur? How are you teaching entrepreneurship? And I think what we have found the best way to do that is just to give you a short glimpse into what happens into one of our prisons. And so I'm just going to play for you a short video that is about 60 seconds long.
Colorado should be the worst place to commit a violent crime, but the best place to get a second chance. I think what Defy does, it defies the odds. It defies the traditional way of looking at rehabilitation and kind of creates its own energy, its own hurricane of possibility.
My goodness, this is a happy day. We're showing that we can become more than our past.
So what do you think? Maybe not what you expect to be happening in prisons, particularly in our more secure prisons within the state. And you probably got a sense from watching that video, the energy, but also the passion that came from the community. You maybe even recognized a few of the faces. And part of the reason we love coming out to the community, particularly here in Boulder, to talk with everyone is Defy was very much born out of the passion for innovation here in Boulder. And I don't know if anybody recognizes, obviously we have the former governor up here, Brad Feld, a couple of other people from the Foundry Group. And the Foundry Group were really the proponents to bring Defy Ventures to Colorado. That passion for entrepreneurship, that passion of bringing the community together to try to solve one of society's problems. And so our goal here today is to spend the next 10 to 15 minutes to tell you a little bit about Defy Ventures Colorado, the what, the why, and the how. And I'm going to have our program manager, Stacey Putka, come up and do that. And before we move to that, I just want to encourage everybody in the room. Our goal today is to make this as interactive as possible, and so we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them at any point. When we get done with our overview of the program from Stacey, we've actually got a very diverse panel here who brings quite differing perspectives from the incarcerated sector in terms of talking about Defy, the program, but more importantly, how we can all come together to solve this issue. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stacey, who will come up and talk about the program.
So Defy Ventures Colorado was born out of the idea that we're all ex-somethings. We think about our past, we can all think of something that we've done that we're not necessarily proud of. And we believe in second chances and providing those second chances through entrepreneurship. We do that in a really unique way that most programs that work with people with criminal histories aren't able to do, that we're very lucky to do. So we start inside prisons and we provide an 8-month-long program called CEO of Your New Life, where individuals engage in character development, career readiness, and entrepreneurial education. So you can see up here from our very complicated program diagram that we start inside the facilities and then we continue to work with people once they're released from incarceration. There are a few things that we do with them when they are released. One is they go through what's called pathways to reentry, where they basically get stable in the community. Housing, healthcare, jobs, financial stability, so that they don't need to revert to old ways of thinking or being. They're stable. Once they're stable within their communities, they can go into our business incubator, where they then learn to actually start and run their own small business that they planned and worked on while they were currently incarcerated. So you can see that our mission is to transform the lives of people with criminal histories along the entrepreneurial journey. The reason that we do this is because America has a prison crisis. We have 5% of the world's population, but 20% of the world's incarcerated population. 30% of 23-year-olds have a criminal history. So whether you're watching this on your computer or you're sitting in the audience, how many of you can think of something really stupid that you did before the time you were 23? We think that's really early to start writing people off. Of people who go to prison, 67% of them are rearrested and go back to prison within 3 years of being released. In Colorado, it's 45%. Having a criminal history makes it significantly difficult to get and maintain employment. People who have a criminal history have employment rates that are 27% lower than other people. And by checking the box, I have a felony history on a job application, reduces their chances of getting a call back from an employer by 50%. So not only do we have a program in prison that's 8 months long where they work on character development, entrepreneurship, and career readiness, we bring in volunteers to help them along that journey. So last year alone, we brought in over 340 volunteers. We brought in 452 Googlers in our counterpart in Northern California. So Googlers have been involved in this for a very long time in Northern California, and we're looking to get Googlers here in Colorado involved as well. The secret sauce to what works, why this program works, is the community that we build around the people who are currently incarcerated. It's very rare for someone who's incarcerated to see anyone else other than correctional officers and their family members. So to have these opportunities to talk about character development, career readiness, and business with top executives and empathetically minded people from the community allows them an extra advantage to success once they reintegrate into society that most people don't have. So on that theme of building community and having this community travel with the people in our program from the inside to the outside, I'm going to bring Bob back up, and he's going to introduce some of our key stakeholders in the community who are going to give you guys a little bit more information.
So why don't we start with go down the line, just start with a brief intro. You know, a lot of it will come out as we go through our panel, but maybe spend 1 or 2 minutes just telling us a little bit about yourself and why you're here today. And we'll start next to me with Brandon.
So my name is Brandon Hagens. I'm the Gang Intelligence Supervisor at Colorado State Penitentiary. Colorado State Penitentiary is where we keep probably the most dangerous offenders in the state of Colorado. And we were actually the first facility, weren't we the first facility? We were the first facility to give this program a go. Initially, when we were told that they were going to come in and this is what they wanted to do, it scared us just because of our offender population. So we sat down and we picked 20 guys that we thought we could put in a room without them trying to kill each other and keeping these wonderful individuals safe. And it worked out. And from that initial class, just the amount of guys that are wanting to get into this and participate in it, I mean, it's just been amazing. Our violence within our facility has dropped off drastically. I can't give you exact percentages, but I can tell you, being there day in and day out, that our violence has dropped because these guys want to get in this program. They want to do better for themselves and learn something.
Hello, my name is Bob Buckles. I work for the Colorado Department of Corrections. I work at the Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility. That's about 2 hours east of Pueblo. And Defy has, from what we can tell, has made a huge difference in our population as far as having offenders involved in the program have bled over to them talking to staff, which before, I mean, that's kind of the no man's land as far as offenders wanting to talk to staff. And Defy, when they're working on their programs, the offenders are working on their plans, they end up coming and asking staff for input, which is really neat. It's a really neat opportunity for us and them.
Hi, my name is Ronnie Madrid, and I am an entrepreneur in training. A graduate from the first class in Colorado State Penitentiary. I agree, it's been amazing. I had to work my butt off to get into that class, and it absolutely changed the path that I was taking before, simply because the people with Defy who came in, as well as this gentleman right here, they are the first ones probably throughout my whole life who actually gave me a chance. And seeing that, I wanted to do better so I could be better. And I've been able to present myself to the world while I'm working on being towards my best. And it's because of the things that I have around me now, the people that I have around me now, from what I learned about myself in transition from being a gang member, a drug dealer, somebody who made terrible choices throughout his life, to a single father who wants to learn how to cook so my kids don't have to eat Hot Pockets and Fruity Pebbles. And they help me when I'm out here. Like, Izzy's always asking if she can help me with anything. It really does extend from the inside out, when not a lot of programs do that are involved with the Department of Corrections. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Tom Wyman. I'm a volunteer from the community. I'm on the Defy Ventures Colorado Advisory Board. I used to work at Google Boulder office for 6 years a while back. Now I'm with a company called Building Ventures. But yeah, I've been a volunteer with Defy Colorado for about a year. First saw it from a Brad Feld blog post. He was talking about his experience in prison and how, I mean, the enthusiasm just completely came through in the blog post. And at the end, after describing his whole day and what it was like, he had Bob's email at the bottom. And so I emailed Bob to find out, what's the story with this thing. And he and Stacy and I went out to lunch, and then Stacy, Izzy, and I went into prison. And yeah, I lost track how many times I've gone back. It's been a wonderful thing.
Oh, me? My name is Travis Taylor, and that wonderful, beautiful human being that you see to my left and your right with the long hair and glasses, he and I are 4 years and 4 hours apart. He is my younger brother. His name is Darius Taylor. I am the very, very proud brother of an Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility, EIT, in graduate. I met Bob at my little brother's graduation. And to say the meeting was life-changing does not do it justice. Defy, in order for it to reach the communities the way that we expected, we will need people such as yourselves to see what we see. And part of that is going to be today. And I hope you become as excited about joining Defy and having it do what it did in my life and in my family's life for you and yours. So I thank you all for being here.
That's great. So we've got about as diverse as you can get in this issue. 2 people who actually work inside the prisons, somebody who was in prison, and then 2 volunteers and 1 who brings the family perspective that's there. You know, the question I would like to go to, and I guess I'm going to do this because the 2 people who drove the farthest, Bob, you drove what, about 3.5 hours to come up here for an hour, and Brandon about 2.5 hours, is why did you do that? I mean, why did you get in the car and drive up here and come here and talk and explain the perspective from your standpoint? Bob, do you want to go first?
Sure. You know, I made the trip because Defy has, like I stated earlier, has made a huge impact for us on the prison population. It was actually impressive when the first day they came in there, we had over 100 offenders. And when they started off the program there, it was amazing how they could control the offender population in that room. The respect that happened between the volunteers and the actual offenders in the room was just incredible. And it was really nice for us to see as staff working there, because we're there to help. We're not there to punish. The courts have already done that. Our job is to help out, for them to be successful. And it's great because when you looked at Defy's mission statement, it actually leads right into our mission statement, which is a successful reentry of all offenders back into society. So it really matches up well. It's worked very well. It keeps them busy. You can walk through at night, do cell checks, look in the doors. They're actually working on their business plan. They take it serious. So it's been a really, really good program, and we believe it.
Brandon, what about you?
So for me, coming from CSP and just the clientele that we have there, when we initially walked these guys into the room to start this program, usually when they leave the day hall, they're fully restrained. Wrists, ankles, they've got handcuffs everywhere. And this was the first time we ever took these individuals and put them in our visiting room and took the cuffs off with a bunch of volunteers. And it was kind of hairy. It didn't feel right for the environment. But once they got rolling with the program, I mean, these guys were standing up, hugging each other, and the whole time I'm thinking, please don't hurt anybody. But this program gave them hope. With the volunteers coming in, a lot of these guys, they don't get family to come in. They don't have much communication at all. And when the volunteers come in, they give them a sense of being, a sense of hope, a sense of purpose. And it's just amazing to see their faces light up, the changes they make, their demeanor, their attitudes. It's just amazing to watch these guys change.
Ron, I want to direct this next question to you, because I think what would be beneficial for the people here in the room and watching on video is to understand that initial engagement point, right? We didn't talk about it earlier, but real quickly, the Defy program is an 8-month program. I would describe it as intensive. Obviously, we'd love your opinion on that. Hour or two a day to stay up with it. Why did you come into the program, and then what kept you going through those 8 months? Because obviously there were the ups and downs of life that were happening as you went through that.
Okay, Bob. I came into the program because it's an entrepreneurship program. I was in prison for a distribution case. I gangbanged my whole life. I lost my wife 18 months ago to a drug overdose. She started using drugs, same drugs that I was selling. She lost her life eventually after it. Our kids were separated. I'm still fighting for my kids right now. And so when that stuff started to happen to me and I seen where my life was headed, I realized that it was time for me to absolutely make a change, or I was gonna die in prison. And at that point, the most important thing to me was family. And I have a job right now. I'm in a halfway house. I got out December 26th, and it's the 3rd job that I've ever had in my life. But the entrepreneurship program, when I went in there and we were working on our resumes and our job skills, I realized that I have marketing, distribution, quality control, customer service. I have all of these skills that I can that are transferable skills that Stacey has. She's like, okay, you could do this, and I realized I absolutely can, and I will. Right now, I'm trying to get it approved with the halfway house for me to go to Metro State. I want to go for organizational communication so I can be, a mentor, a consultant. I want to be able to, just pass the buck. I also want to look into some, certification for addictions counseling, simply because I've been on both sides of the dope game. I've been in the streets. I was a gang leader for my neighborhood, and I walked away, and that was the scariest. To walk away from the streets, it was the scariest thing that I've ever done in my life, because I had made it through the ups and the downs. Colorado State Penitentiary, I don't know if you are aware, but it's the absolute worst that the state of Colorado has to offer as far as punishment, minus the death penalty. You go to prison, you get in trouble, you go to prison. You get in trouble in prison, you go to the hole. You keep getting in trouble, they send your butt to Colorado State Penitentiary. And it's a war zone. It's a war zone. They let us out for breakfast, and everybody's running to the shower so they could go get their shower, because we might have been locked down for 6-7 days because of a stabbing or an assault or something like that. And as soon as 3-4 minutes later, it's first responders, and it's literally a war zone. But when Defy came and we were ready to go, every Tuesday I was like, I'm gone. I'm leaving this place. I'm getting some sanity. I'm getting, some peace for a while, because everybody in that program, it's like, this is not what we're doing. This is what we're doing for us tomorrow. We could leave all the politics and all the prison stuff back at the house, and everybody did it. I don't know how these people did it. I don't know how Bob and Stacy and the volunteers and everybody came in, but they did it. Like, I seriously, this man right here said they do walks and people are doing their homework, and they're big books like this. And I would literally stay in my room some days for 2-3 hours thinking about what I need to say for this answer, because it affected me, because I really wanted that change. And these people really put forth the effort and the time and were patient with us. They literally laid on the floor with us and were like, we're here. We got something. If you want to accept it, fine. You know what I mean? We're willing to give it to you all the way through. And they followed through. It started on the inside. I came out, and this is the best I've ever done in my life. This is the best I've ever done in my life. I know for sure I'll be a multimillionaire in 5 years. Legit. Seriously, legit. But
That's great. I think that's interesting, right? As we go down the line, we hear the impact in prisons, we hear the impact, Ron, in your life, but I want to switch to hear about the impact that Tom and Travis have seen, both from themselves and the community. But I think, Travis, I want to start with you, is also talk a little bit about the impact you've seen in your brother, Darius, who's at Arkansas Valley.
So, usually I tell the story about, my brother and how he wound up in prison, but listening to that, I want to back up just a second. So when my brother first went to prison, the first time, it was in 2001, or 2000. He went from 2000 to 2005. He's in the federal penitentiary, and he was prosecuted under something called Project Exile, where if you carry a gun, an illegal gun in the state of Colorado, you automatically got a 5-year federal prison sentence. Don't pass go, don't collect $200, don't say hi to your mama. You're gone. My brother was 19 years old. My brother went to prison at 19, weighing, he was 5'4", 5'5", weighing 140 pounds. My brother came out of prison weighing 215 pounds. And he looked like one of them action figures from Batman or something. Now, for the rest of us, we're like, oh, okay. Well, my brother stayed free exactly 6 weeks. 6 weeks. That second time, they sent my brother away for 44 years. Let that sink in your head for a second. 44 years. The problem with that is my brother wasn't doing 44 years alone. My mother, myself, my father, his sister, nieces, nephews, we all got that 44-year prison sentence. We all got the 5-year prison sentence. We all got the 6-week furlough. So my brother never understood this concept. No matter how many times we tried to talk to him, there was a period where I didn't write, speak, or talk to my brother. He'd write letters, I'd take the letters, and someday if I ever see y'all again, I'll show you. I kept the box, and y'all didn't know this. I kept the box of the unopened letters because I didn't feel he deserved my energy or time to read another excuse, another, it won't happen again. Because it kept happening. Even when he was in prison, it kept happening. Then Defy comes along, and I'm going to kind of speed it up now. Defy comes along, and his entire thought pattern of how he processed information changed. The way he carried himself changed. The way he started talking changed. He said something that I'd never heard him say before at a visit. And he goes, I did it. Excuse me, what? Huh? What? He said, I did it. I did everything they said I did. I did it all. I made that mistake, but that was me then. That's not me now. So while you're here on this visit, you have a choice. You can keep looking at me for who I was, or you can look at me for who I'm trying to become. I have seen my brother virtually every weekend since that meeting. I was proud to go to his graduation. I walked up to Bob, because you weren't supposed to get up and walk around, like, because it's a prison and you weren't supposed to be moving. But the guy that saw me was like, hey, I was like, can I go talk to this guy? And I'm pointing to Bob, and he's like, I ain't see you. So I jump up and I run over to Bob, and he's in the middle of talking to somebody, and I'm trying to keep it together, but I can't stop crying. And it wasn't sadness, it was absolute elation, because I had never seen my brother graduate from anything but a prison sentence to another prison sentence. That's all I had seen. And now I see my brother walking around with his chest out, his head's up, and he's recognizing not only what he was, but who he can become. And I walked up to Bob and I told him, I said, Bob, listen, I own a company. It's a finance company. I make a little bit of money, not like this, but I make some money. And I said, Bob, whatever you want, I'll write you a check. Whatever you need. Whatever you need. He was like, I don't really know you, but okay, cool. And I'm sitting there like, I love you people. And he's like, I just met you. I was like, no, I still love you, right? And he and Stacy gave myself and a gentleman in the back there is my business partner named Gil Datz, and a young lady there named Kayla Golay. She just got married, everybody, Kayla Golay. And they decided to help me with Bob and Stacy and Izzy. And listening to you, I can only imagine what that felt like walking out the door and changing your life for the good. These two gentlemen who, we're not going to knock them for what they do for their living, because they have a purpose. But I'm certain they're happy to hear that they will never meet you in their professional life again, right? And that's really what this is about. That's what I guess you wanted me to tell you. I'm not going to, bore you with all the family history, but the bottom line is my little brother is now a different person. And it would have never happened. Listen to me very closely. They say never use the word never. It would have never happened without Bob and Stacy. My brother came from a 2-parent home. My dad was in the military. My mom was a registered dietitian. We all went to college. He had a football scholarship. There was absolutely no reason for him to ever join a gang, let alone put that monstrosity that's on his back. But he did. And now he's understanding that he did not belong in prison, except to learn the life he had was a blessing. You've learned the life that you have is a blessing, no matter what environment you were in. Defy gave that back to my family. And as I told you then, I'll tell you now for the rest of my life, whatever you need, whenever you need it, you call. And I hope you do. And I thank Defy for giving my family an opportunity to have my brother back. And I thank you for all your hard work. Stay on his ass while you're in there and bring my brother home. Because I know once he comes home, the only time we'll ever think about you is when we see you at a Defy event, because you will never see him in your professional capacity again. And I thank you and Defy and Stacy for all of that. And I hope all of you join us with working with Defy. I really do. It'll change your lives because it changed ours.
Well, so let me just jump in, because what are we really saying here, right? I mean, I mean, let's just reframe it. We don't have a shortage of people in prisons, right? We don't have a shortage of programs in prisons, right? These aren't one-off situations with Ronnie, with Darius, et cetera, that's here. You know, I have my belief of what we're talking about here, which is this issue of volunteerism and collective community impact. But I'm actually interested, following on Travis's point, Tom, is to hear from you. What's been your experience as a volunteer? I mean, I'm assuming you'd never been into prison before you came in with Defy for the first time. You know, before we talked about, 340 plus volunteers who came in 2018, who made the 2.5-hour drive from Boulder and places. I mean, how many times have you been to prison with us?
I'm not sure. I've sort of lost count.
Yeah, I mean, it easily has to be above 5. I mean, at this
Yeah,
point.
I think it's double digits, but
But what is it from your perspective, right? You don't come with Travis's background of having a loved one who had been in prison. What is it from that perspective, from the volunteer's perspective, you think, that makes it work?
Well, I think, you know, what motivates you to go in and then what your experience is once you're in are sort of two different stories. And I think the thing that motivated me to go in is, it's probably a little fuzzy. You know, as I get older, I'm more curious about different people's experiences, more maybe aware of some of the benefits I've had in my life. But mostly, I'm kind of a sucker for a cause. And I didn't know if this was going to be, you know, I didn't know this was going to be the cause. I just thought it was an interesting thing to do. And so I talked to Bob and Stacy, and they made it sound great. And so I hopped in the car and drove to Arkansas Valley. And it's a long drive, and it's a long time to think about, wow, I'm going to walk into a prison. I've never really been in a prison. That's maybe that's a little bit out of my comfort zone. Maybe I wonder why I signed up for this exactly. And so you go in, or at least I went in with Stacy and Izzy that first time, and it was to speak to a class. Every week there's a class with a different topic, and I think I was talking about sort of personal brand and raising money and that sort of thing. And I walked in the room, and all these guys wearing green just sort of made a beeline right for me. And everyone had a giant grin on their face and their hand out. And it wasn't like that polite, well, it's very nice to meet you. It was like they were psyched to see me. And I wasn't exactly sure why they were psyched to see me, but it was like this instant acceptance that you don't get when you just sort of walk into a business meeting. And so that felt, I mean, I was immediately at feeling comfortable with the whole thing. And I got on with my presentation, and we were talking about ways to fund your company. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, bootstrapping our friends and family round, or angel, or venture, or whatever. And somebody raised their hand and said, hey, what about a bank loan? And I started to answer and realized, you know, I've never really been involved in one of those transactions with a startup with a bank loan. And so I started to explain that, you know, this isn't something I have a lot of experience in. And this guy in the back row, one of the EITs in the back row, raises his hand. He's like, excuse me, the first company that I started, actually, we started with a bank loan. I could address this if you'd like. And this guy gave a great explanation of how that works. And it was at that moment that I realized, wow, I totally sold these guys short. And as you listen to the questions they asked and the points they made, there were a bunch of very sharp, super motivated people in that room. And you realize, oh my gosh, there is a ton of potential locked up in this space. I think the other thing, Bob, that totally motivated me was the way these guys make themselves vulnerable. I mean, part of every session starts with commitments. Thank you. Commitments and affirmations. And one of them is, I I will be vulnerable. And, you know, you just know from life experience that you can have so much better conversation with someone. You can learn so much more from them, and they can get more from you if you allow yourselves to make yourself vulnerable. But if you think about it in prison, that's probably the last thing that you want to be is vulnerable. Yeah. And so the fact that they can come into this room and have so much trust in each other and the volunteers, and they can just flip that switch and be completely open and vulnerable for a couple hours and then go back to their regular life and turn that off. I mean, to me, that just showed they're willing to make a giant leap to make this work. That cannot be an easy thing. And I think that was one of the things that partly sold me on the effort that they put into it, but partly just made it so much more rewarding for me and made it such a privilege to spend time with these guys and get to know them a little bit.
Yeah, you know, I think that's an interesting point on the vulnerability. And you know, Ron, I want to come back to you and your experience being on the inside. You know, we use the word EIT, entrepreneur in training, which everybody who comes into our program, you know, that's what their title is. What was the impact of that volunteers, of those volunteers coming into the facility week after week? Not only how did it kind of tie into your personal journey, but how did it tie into that aspect of vulnerability, of people feeling like, you know, they can kind of not let their guard down, for lack of a better term, but to work on what's important in terms of making transformational change?
Well, the thing is everybody in prison wants to change. Every single person, I don't care who it is, everyone is tired of it, especially repeat offenders. I'm a repeat offender. I actually do know your brother, Dap.
Yeah.
We started out together at the same time in prison, and he had just got out the feds, and I was on my way back to prison. We were in Denver County together. We used to work. That's a good friend of mine. I just haven't seen him forever. But especially repeat offenders, we're always like, I'm so tired of this. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. But there's never anything available to us simply because of our jackets, of our background, of who we are on paper. The recidivism rate stays high because nobody knows who we are, because nobody gives us a chance. Up until very recently, I grew up in the juvenile system and spent about 13 and a half years of my adult life in the adult system. And I take full responsibility for the choices that I made, and sentences were deserved. They were deserved because I was making poor life choices and I was where I needed to be. Going back to what I said in the beginning, everybody wants to change. Everybody wants to change. And even when we speak up and we're like, I don't want to do this no more. Up until very recently, the Department of Corrections hasn't been the Department of Corrections. It never corrected behavior. It was the Department of Confinement. They would lock us up. And CSP, they just opened it up. It's a closed facility now, but I did 6 years in solitary confinement because of the choices that I made inside of prison. And nobody cared about what I wanted to do because I was just like everybody else. Like I said, everybody inside wants to change. And they speak it. I don't want to do this no more. I don't want to do this no more. The fact of the matter is, it's another world inside. Being vulnerable is the last thing that you want to be in prison. You have to be an alpha male or you're going to be something that you don't want to be. You're going to be the victim of something or somebody. And when Defy would bring their volunteers in, you know, all of us, we couldn't wait to go to class on Tuesday, and because it was 5 hours away from, you know, the craziest stuff that you could imagine. You never realize what people could do to people when you're in a war zone, and you go into them classes, and these people right here, they would come up and they didn't look at you like that. They wanted to hear what you actually had to say about your business or about your day or about your family, about what you wanted to do, and they really wanted to help you. Every conversation that I had with anybody, as far as a volunteer that came up, they've held true to their word. They seriously have held true to their word, and I feel like the way to lower the recidivism rate is for people to get to know who we are. You know, we're not product of our environments, we're just product of the choices that we made. Sometimes we didn't know any better. I learned everything in life through trial and error. I didn't have a dad or a big brother or anybody to show me. Well, my parents were there. I've been on my own since I was 13. So when they would come in and just get to know us and see the type of people who we are and not the crime that we committed, it made them look at us different. So if you guys want to lower the recidivism rate in Colorado, get to know some criminals who want to change. You know, be volunteers, go up and speak with the people at the Defy events, even if it's just one time. Like, I guarantee you, everybody wants to change. Everybody wants to change. For the most part, a lot of people just don't know how.
I think that's, looking at the clock, I want to make sure we leave enough time for question and answers, so try to drive towards a wrap up. But I think, Randy, that's a perfect segue to what I'd like for the final question to be, is what can the community do to solve this issue of recidivism, and at a more finite level to support what's happening here in the state of Colorado? And I guess, Travis, I'd like to start with you, because I think your perspective, you know, you've seen it coming back to your brother, but you're also an entrepreneur yourself. And so, you know, I think it's an interesting perspective of saying, what can people in the community do?
So I'm glad I was asked that question. Indulge me for a second. Everybody in this room, put your hands up, like this. All right? Just keep them up there for a second. Think about this. Imagine you just walked out of prison and you just applied for a job and they told you they're going to call you back. And this is the 9th time today someone said they're going to call you back. And your probation officer's calling you, asking you why you don't have a job. Your kid's mom or dad is screaming at you about not paying your bills. You're living with your family and they're telling you how you're a loser and how you're not going to work. And then you're turning around and you're looking at the world, and how does the world see you? With your hands up, right? You're vulnerable right now. Your hands are up because it shows that you're giving up. If we don't work together to change our society and help Defy, this is how we will be someday. Our hands are going to be up. And there's going to be someone at the business end of a handgun or a knife, and they're going to be trying to take what we worked so hard to get, because they felt like this that morning, and they got sick of it. We as a society need to get sick of people walking around with their hands in the air. We have to decide that we as a community can work together to bring our hands down. This is not about a handout. This is about a hand up. It's about you being in a position to change someone else's life with something as simple as your time. Simply listening to someone's story and saying, hey, I can't promise you that you're going to get a job at Google, right? I can't promise you that you will be a millionaire in 5 years, but you know what I can do for you? I can help you make a better decision so that you and I aren't talking inside of a prison. That's what you can do. You can write a check. That's true too. I can just simply pay the problem away. right? And you can leave it on the shoulders of Izzy and Stacy and Bob and the correctional folks here to take the money and try to do some good with it. That works too. But is that a solution to a long-term problem? You guys deal with code and complex algorithms every day, right? I know, I pay y'all with Google AdWords. I pay you, right, for that. And you guys work, you're very welcome. I paid for all of this, just so you know. Just so you know, right? Discount, brother, hear me. But imagine how complex it is not having this. I'm not trying to guilt you into anything. I'm trying to get you to step back and say, we as a society have to decide when enough is enough. 5% of the world's population, yet 20% of them are incarcerated. We've turned punishment into a business. And business is good. Is this who we are? We define who we are by simply taking an opportunity to reach out to somebody else, if it's just your time, if you're more comfortable with the money, if you're more comfortable with a mentorship. All of this is needed by Defy. Each one of you in this room have the power to do something, no matter how small you think it is. And all I'm asking you is somebody whose brother was blessed enough to be part of this. Please. I'm asking for my brother, for my mother, my father, and for every person that is not here, please. You can change our lives. And all we're asking is please. I have nothing else to say.
We're going to end it right there. That was incredibly well said, Travis. Thank you very much for that. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. And I think now we'll open it up to questions from the audience. Anybody have a question?
I was just wondering, you talked a little bit about what some of the roles that volunteers have, but I was curious if you could give a little more of an idea of what kinds of roles and opportunities there are in terms of volunteering and what you would do in those roles.
Sure.
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah, why don't you take that?
Sure. So volunteers have several opportunities to come into the facilities with us. We have 3 big events throughout the 8-month program that focus mostly on empathy building and coaching on deliverables that they all create as a result of the program. So those are, we have a 1-to-1 ratio those days. So if we have 40 EITs, we'd have 40 volunteers come in. And if I was your EIT, I would show you my resume and you would give me coaching on how to better craft my resume, right? So those days are very structured and everyone's getting feedback on the same deliverables. Then we have our weekly classroom sessions, which are every Tuesday at both Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility and Colorado State Penitentiary. They're 2.5 hours long and people come in and go over a variety of different topics. I always have volunteers say to me, I'd like to come in and observe a class. There's no such thing. You get thrown right into it and have some of the most impactful, very cool conversations. The other is with our alumni groups. So specifically, if we talk about Travis's brother, Darius, we have a lot of the guys who have longer or even life sentences who graduated from our first cohort but are still very committed to change and transformation. So we've put together an alumni program where we continue to provide them, kind of like, think of it as like elective courses, where if you guys wanted to put together a presentation to show them, I would set up the day and the time, and I would call Bob and ask him to get me a room, and we'd bring all the alumni in, bring in the volunteers, and kind of create something new, which Uzu Media actually did for us, Travis's company. So
Gil Dance's company, right there.
Gil and Travis.
I think the other part, because we've talked primarily today about the in-prison program. Obviously, Stacey hit on that inside-out model. But the aspect of the outside piece is the post-release program. And graduates who are coming back out into the community, Ronnie being one, and starting to run corporate workshops, starting to run mentorships in the community to continue on that path of assisting on entrepreneurship path, assisting on life skills and that sort of thing. And so, it's certainly largely in prison right now, but also out in the community, there's a variety of opportunities as well.
Bob, can I just jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I would just say, if you're wondering whether you're qualified to help or you would be good to help, if this resonated with you at all, then you're totally qualified and you will be really good. And you will think of it maybe as going in for a volunteer opportunity and you giving, but I promise you, you will get so much more back. And I know that's trite and it's cliche, but I probably spend 4 or 5 days after prison just processing all the conversations I've had, processing what I've learned about people, putting my life in sort of a different perspective. It's a great deal. You should jump on it.
That's an interesting point. I just want to jump back in because we have, as a program, we have 2 requirements for anybody who wants to come into our program in prison, and we have 2 requirements for any volunteer. And anybody who wants to come into our program, when we go into a new prison, I stand in front of them and I say, we don't work with criminals. We work with people who've done some bad stuff, and we don't work with slackers. And if you meet both of those boxes, then you're welcome to come into the program. And for volunteers, the numerous that I meet and talk to, there's only 2 requirements. One is showing up. Showing up's half the ball game here. And the other thing is coming in with an open mindset. And I think it's back to your point, Tom. If you're willing to come in with that open mindset, that's where the interaction takes over.
Can I just say something real quick? About coming in, we're all human beings, so we relate to each other in different ways. It's not about being poor or rich or whatever, it's about being a human being. You never know who you're gonna run into, who one word could actually change your perspective. I come from the streets and, my life was on the curb selling dope or doing whatever. And, with Defy and, the path that I was taking, they absolutely helped me stand on that same curb, just like this, from the streets, looking at the streets and say, hey, turn around. And when I turned around, I seen the rest of the world. And I want to be a part of that. And maybe somebody who you talk to in prison or whatever you guys could do, you guys might just be the one to change that one person who nobody could thought would be changed, and let them see the rest of the world from that same curve. That's the best thing you guys could do.
That's great. I think we had a question over here.
Your courage and your empathy are tremendous, and I feel it, and I think most of this room feel it. I think people who work at Google tend to have that in there. It is part of our hiring criteria. There's a Googliness hiring criteria that we often go through, and we can sense that empathy in others as well. That said, what I wanted to ask really is, how many of your graduates of the program actually come back and volunteer? And I'm very curious about that. And also, Trevor, was it?
Who, me? I'm
Yes.
Travis.
Travis?
Yeah, I can be Trevor if you give me a
Travis.
discount on AdWords.
Brother, I got your AdWords optimization all ready for you, so I can help you with that.
Yeah. On the first question, I'll jump in on that. So in Nebraska and in California, other Defy states, there's actually EITs that work for those chapters that have come back. So that's taking volunteering to the utmost level from that standpoint. Here in Colorado, Ronnie came with us. We did a radio show a couple of weeks ago, and Ronnie was with us. 2 weeks ago, we made a presentation to about 150 people in the community corrections industry in Colorado. And we brought another one of our graduates, Damien, with us. And, Brandon and Bob could talk about this more, but this was all people who run the community corrections across Colorado, the halfway houses, the other facilities. And they came up to us afterwards and they said, we've never had somebody come back in and present. And they just couldn't believe it. They were just baffled by the fact that Damien was willing to come in and was willing to stand up there and be part of our presentation and do the Q&A. And so for us, for us, that's a key tenet of the overall program, is to continue to pay it forward. I had one final one, if we have time, that's there. I'd like, Ron, put you on the spot a little bit, but we talked about one of the tenets of the Defy Ventures Colorado program is business ideation. You have to develop a business. You have to pitch a business. In fact, it's a requirement to graduate to pitch a for-profit business at a formal business pitch competition. What was your business idea? And tell us a little bit about it.
My business idea was a taco truck. I know it's, Denver is saturated with them, but my taco truck is Yummy Yum Yums. I feel like the name alone is going to be catchy enough to go along with the quality of food that I'm going to produce. It's going to be authentic Latin cuisine, barbacoa tacos, tacos de ceviche, tacos de lengua, real authentic Mexican food, Latin food, with a drink and some chips or whatever. It's going to cost me about $7,300 to get, to purchase a used car, 2 grills, a freezer. I have this idea that I'm going to candy paint it up, make it appealing to the eye. I want to park it, I'm going to focus on the nightlife in downtown Denver because, when everybody gets out of the clubs or from going out, everybody wants to go and get something to eat. And everybody's trying to get pushed out of the clubs, and people want to interact with each other and figure out what's going on next. So, I have this vision of a Yummy Yum Yum truck with some really good food on the grill with some music still playing, kind of keep it going a little bit afterwards. And my plates are going to be like anywhere between like $8 and $11 for a plate of like 3 to 5 tacos, depending on what you get. Drinks are going to be like $1.50, $2 extra. $7,300 is the truck, the trailer, first month's inventory, licensing and permits, and the paint job bar to get it screen wrapped. And the employees, my employees, I will pay them just $100 a day. They'll have to pay their own taxes, but yeah, coming soon. Actually, next summer. I get out of the halfway house this summer. So I'm gonna have a whole year to work on saving the $7,300, and I plan on launching Cinco de Mayo next year. I'll have my first Yummy Yum Yum truck. Like, it's gonna be official. I'm gonna do merchandising, everything, Yummy Yum Yum shirts, everything. Because when you guys are hungry and stuff, you guys are thinking about what to eat, you're gonna be like, what should we eat? You want Mexican? Oh, yum. Yummy Yum Yums, we have these tacos.
So there we go. If we have anybody in the audience or anybody watching who has restaurant experience and wants to work with Ron on helping him get his business off the ground, you know where to come to. So I think we'll end right there. I want to thank our panelists once again for coming up here and doing this. And I want to say, on behalf of everybody at Defy Ventures Colorado, I want to thank Google. In particular, I want to thank Jess for giving us this opportunity to come in and tell you a little bit about the work we do, the work we're very passionate about, and we're incredibly grateful that you had us here today. So thank you.